Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Master Coach and Education Director Aaron Guyett. But nothing. I am here with the one and only Brian Keane, coming straight out of Ireland. This guy just finished aside from the fact that he's written multiple books, he has covered the entire world, the entire globe with his fitness acumen. I just finished the incredibly bone-chilling and awe-inspiring book, Rewire Your Mindset. Brian Keane, thank you so much for hopping on the Living Fit Show with us.
The pleasure's all mine, Aaron. And mate, thank you so much for reading the book. I really appreciate that. You had some really kind words before we went on air, so I'm really looking forward to chatting. So thank you again.
Man, there's just something about myself and pain and suffering. It's like this weird relationship. It's a love-hate, but there's something about it that just absolutely intrigues me. I guess we could just dive right in. I mean, you talk about doing multiple marathons. First of all, you're not like a marathon guy. You were a bodybuilder doing marathons, which already is like, I can feel the pain in your joints, right? But then you did multiple marathons through the Sahara Desert. And then you're like, oh, well, that's not enough. I'm going to go up into the Arctic and see if I can't freeze my blood before finishing this incredible trek. So yeah, talk me through what got you into fitness, and then we'll steer it into then what got you into these incredible, I mean, they're totally mind-bending ventures. But yeah, first start with what got you into fitness?
So I have quite a traditional route into fitness when it comes to, I was into sport and I was a sporty kid, and probably there's not too many who have the similar route to endurance that I have in terms of competitive bodybuilder and that whole journey. But I was always a sporty kid. I didn't do very well in school, Aaron. So as most people who don't do well in school, you tend to gravitate towards the things you are good at. So thankfully I was good at sport. And I started lifting weights when I was 13 in my bedroom at home. And for my 16th birthday, my mom and dad bought me a gym membership, and I am 34 now, 35 the end of this year. And I've been going to the gym 4 to 5 days a week since I was 16. And so I've always had a huge love for fitness and something that I will do until the day I die. And I've kind of gone down several different rabbit holes when it comes to what you would have as the average fitness person. So I started as a sports person. So in that kind of functional fitness, doing a lot of squats, deadlifts, performance-based stuff. And then when I was 26, I went into competitive bodybuilding, and I competed as a professional fitness model, which meant that one of the categories that I was in was professional, meaning that you got paid if you did well in these shows. And for 2 years I did that. That was basically my life. I was traveling around the world, doing shows in London, doing shows in Vegas, doing shows in the US, the UK, different parts of Europe. And
no off season, huh?
Not for me. I have mellowed in my later age, but I didn't do an off season. I was wow. There's no need to get ready if you stay ready. Like that was my philosophy when I competed and was a competitor. And it's changed a little bit in recent years because I have got a bit more balance in my life with different things. But for when I was competing as a bodybuilder, I was all in on that. I was going from photo shoot to show to photo shoot to show. And I just stayed lean. I stayed big. I stayed muscular. I stayed lean. And in 2015, then my daughter was born, which changed everything effectively. My love for bodybuilding and competing in that world nearly went away overnight. And I was in preparation for the Worlds in Las Vegas in 2015. I did okay in that show. I came 8th in that show, top 10 in the world, and I was done. That was it then. I was decided I'm not doing bodybuilding again. It's draining but I was walking around, Aaron, like a zombie, because you're in that caloric deficit. You're walking around lean. My brain didn't work that well, and I was thinking I was going to be an absolute crap dad and a terrible father if I keep living like this. So I went away from that. I wrote my first book, the fitness mindset off the back of it, just because that type A personality, I do need to have goals and work towards things, self-awareness on my part. And I feel the most fulfilled when I'm working towards a specific goal. So I wrote my first book that did incredible. Like it sounds like a humble brag, and it sounds like it's like, oh, hindsight. I never thought that book would do as well as it did. It was 16 weeks on the Amazon bestseller list. It sold nearly 50,000 copies up to this date. And just the messages I get from people, and it just sent things into the stratosphere when it came to business. But in between the two books, the one you mentioned, Rewire Your Mindset, and the fitness mindset, I got a little bit of an itch for competitiveness coming back. And I found I was walking around a little bit unfulfilled in certain areas of my life. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, but I needed that outlet. I needed that kind of fitness outlet. And to cut a long story short, I'm a marathon runner. I'm not an endurance athlete. Like, I'm 5'8", 85 kilos. I'm not sure what that is in pounds. And I'm built like a hobbit. Like, I'm not built to run marathons. I'm built like of that short and stocky frame.
Hairy feet and all.
Oh yeah, well that's it. But well, Mrs. loves it, so it's fine. So it's okay. Thankfully, no joke. But I went to an event in 2017, the year the book came out. It was a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event in Amsterdam, and I met a friend of mine who since became a very close and personal friend. And he was telling me about this race in the desert, in the Sahara. And I didn't even know what an ultra marathon was. He was like, I do ultra marathons. I was like, what's an ultra marathon? He's like, oh, it's anything over marathon, anything over 26.2 miles. I was like, oh, that's cool. And he goes, oh, well, I did Marathon des Sables. And I was like, what's Marathon des Sables? He goes, well, it's 6 back-to-back marathons running through the Sahara Desert, and it's self-sufficient. So you have to carry all your food on your back, all your equipment on your back. You need to have your arms within arm's reach of your venom pump at all times in case you get bitten by a snake. And I was just engrossed in what he was saying. I was like, oh my God, that sounds insane. And I missed the whole next lecture. Someone came on to speak for an hour, and I was there on Google on my phone going, Marathon des Sables, flights to the Sahara. I was like, this is so cool. And then something happened, Aaron, that tends to happen to me and has happened in lots of times in the past, where I got home from Amsterdam. I kept in contact with Tom Otten, who has since become a really good friend of mine. And a voice came into the back of my head, one that's very familiar, that thankfully is less familiar now, that was like, you can't do that. You're not a runner. That is crazy. And I put it to the back burner, didn't think about it again for another 2 months. And then I sat outside about 2 months later, about to put up a post on Instagram. I was starting to post a lot of content to Instagram at the time, and motivational stuff, just, the usual kind of phrase stuff that was on Instagram in 2017. And it was, behind every fear is a person you want to be. And I sat there over the post button on Instagram going, you fucking hypocrite. I was like, you're about to put a post on Instagram and you are not going to do this race you heard about because you're afraid. And I felt this huge disconnection to what I was posting and how I was actually feeling. So I didn't put up that post, and I went home that night and I signed up for the race. I put down my deposit and decided, well, I'm just going to figure out and learn how to do this. I talk about it in Rewire Your Mindset, that I worked off a pyramid of prioritization, a story that people question me on, but anyone that's ever gone from non-runner to runner has experienced. My first 2-kilometer run when I signed up to Marathon des Sables was harder than any marathon I've ever ran. I did my normal bodybuilding workout, Aaron. I went into the gym, I did chest, I did shoulders, I did triceps, and then I hopped on a treadmill and put the speed up to, I think it was 16 kilometers per hour at the time. I didn't know it was that fast. I didn't know if that was slow. I had never used a treadmill except for an incline walk when I was preparing for bodybuilding shows. And I did 2 kilometers and I nearly got sick. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to spew. I sat in the dressing room, and if you break down 6 back-to-back marathons in the Sahara, that's 250 kilometers. And I was sitting there with my head in my hands going, oh my God, you feel sick after 2. How are you going to do another 248 kilometers? You're just not going to be able. And long story short, I got out of my own head and decided, well, actually, I need to focus on running a marathon. I've never ran a marathon, and there's no point worrying about running 6 if I can't run 1. So this was August 2017. I signed up to the Dubai Marathon in January 2018. Several months later, I ran that with a backpack and a hoodie in the heat in Dubai, and felt quietly confident after that. And then April of that year, 4 months later, I went to the Sahara. I would love to say I ran, but that would be a very loose term of my movement pattern towards the end. I
Right.
did what's called the Sahara shuffle. That's not quite a jog, not quite a run. It's kind of a shuffle forward because of the
Right.
blisters on your feet, and my knees and ankles and hips and everything were killing me. But I did it. I got to the finish line in 2018. And up until that point, it was the hardest thing I've ever done up until that point, because I did the Arctic years later, which was 10 times harder. But up until that point, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And it made me question all these kind of self-limiting beliefs that I had held, because I went through every story you can go through in your head. I'm not a runner. I'm an athlete. I've played sport. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm too big. I'm not going to be able to get to the finish line. What are you doing in the Sahara? You've never done any of these races. And all of these stories, we all have stories and excuses that will run through our head in any given area, whether it's business, relationship, fitness goals, etc. And I just had to basically get over it. Now, I used social media as an external validation or an external accountability for me. I posted it on my social media. I told people I was doing it because, you know, from the book, I have an excerpt in the book of the note I wrote to myself before I went. And I posted this on my website in the bonus from the book, because I was shitting a brick. And if you would have given me an out, I would have taken it like that. But I couldn't. I told everybody I was going to do it. And I was so afraid the week before I went that I just had to, you know, get out of my own head. And then when I came back, I felt, I won't say unstoppable because it sounds like a bit of a trite cliche, but that's how I felt when I came back. I felt limitless, you know, and that did punch me in the face. As you know, in Rewire Your Mindset, I went to an ultra in Barcelona that November and failed it and bottled out and said, I'm not doing this. And I did not finish, DNF'd. And that failure was the seed of failure that planted the tree for future success when it came to the Arctic. And the Sahara was my entry point to that. So yeah, we can go whatever direction you want from there, but that's a long-winded way of saying that's how I got into fitness and into the endurance events that I do.
No, I mean, that's beautiful. And well, if you want to get a long story longer, you have to read this book. I mean, the words, I mean, the whole time you're just inspiring, but I think the beauty is you're not inspiring by just crushing all of these awesome things. You're showing, you know, vulnerability and authenticity. And I think that's a lot of the disenfranchisement. It seems to me, from my perspective and my observation of kind of the world that we live in, especially on social media, there's a lot of disenfranchisement because there's this believism where it's like, oh, I'm saying that I'm doing it, but then the actions aren't backing up, right? In the same way that you hovered over that post, right? It's like, man, am I going to be about this, or am I going to fucking retreat? Am I going to just throttle down, or am I going to showcase this coolness, this cool factor, but then kind of walk it out? It's like, you got to look at yourself in the mirror. I don't know. What do you think about this whole like believism where people are saying it, but they're not following through with it? What's your thought on that? Obviously the entire book is basically about that, it seems.
It's interesting. It's a really good question, Aaron. And the answer is, it's hard to put words into anybody else's mouth, but I know when I'm being unauthentic or misaligned with what I'm preaching, I feel the disconnection. And I there's an element of, yes, you just have to suck things some up and just do it and kind of grit things out to a degree. But when it comes to building that mindset, or what I call rewiring your mindset, you have to see the negatives, the failures, the things that didn't go well, the inner self-talk that wasn't supportive, the anxiety that fueled it. And for me, talking about that and exploring it and going deeper with it on myself gets me clearer on why I do things, which helps me stay more aligned with my message. I never want to be the person on social media or on a podcast or in a book that says one thing and does another. It just, it's not the way I want to show up online. And I think when you're someone who's consuming information, and there's definitely a time and a place to consume, but there's also a time and a place to just block it all out. Block out my voice, block out your voice, block out everyone's voice, and just put the blinkers on and just go and do it, because you can have sensory overload. But it's also very important that you're critical about who it is you're following, because I've had conversations with people who will act a certain way on social media. And then when I speak to them in real life, I'm like, there's a huge disconnection and misalignment with what you promote and who you are as a person. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's indifferent. And I think as someone who's consuming information, you can fool somebody who hasn't done much. It's very hard to fool me with someone who's full of shit saying, do this, do this, do this. Because when you've done it, you have a different perspective and you can see. But if you're at the start of your journey, let's say you want to run a 10K or a half marathon or a full marathon, or you want to do a Spartan challenge or a Tough Mudder or whatever it is, insert fitness goal here, kettlebell competition, whatever, CrossFit competition. At the beginning, it's the easiest to be knocked over. I speak about it with confidence, the confidence table in the book, that when you're at the start of any new journey, your confidence is normally at your lowest. Competence is also quite low because you're relatively new to it, which means that it's very easy to knock you over, i.e. it's like having one leg on a table. It's easy to knock it over. But as you consistently move closer to your goal and set those small goals and you hit them, be it a 1 kilometer run or a half-mile run to a 2-mile run to a 3-mile run, or squatting 40 pounds to 50 pounds to 60 pounds, insert goal here. As I said, you start to build those legs on the confidence table and you get more self-confidence within yourself. And then you can start to see when there's people preaching at you who aren't necessarily doing what they're saying, because you have that self-confidence within yourself and you're not going off what they say. So I do think there's a time and a place to consume the right information, read the right books, arm yourself with that knowledge. My authors hate this when I say, or my publishers hate this when I say this as an author. I'm like, look, some people should 100% read my book because it'll potentially change their life if they're in a position to consume it, and others shouldn't. It's a waste of their time, waste of money, waste of time. Don't read it. You're not going to get benefit from it. Whereas my publishers like, just fucking sell the book to everybody. But I don't but I don't believe that. I genuinely don't think that's true. I think that if you're in a position to consume it and it's what you need right now, it could change your life in a positive way. But if you're not, if you're in the, I want to put, what I call victim mentality, if you're in the, it's everybody else's fault, my book's going to be a waste of your time. It's just going to be another self-help book that tells you to, do this. And then you're like, no, actually, this isn't my problem. You don't know my life. I'm like, that's fair. I addressed that at the very start of the book. It's true. I don't know your life. I don't know your circumstance, but I can give you some success clues that have worked for people, myself and others in the past, for getting their mindset right to hit whatever goal they set for themselves. And as to bring it back to what you said, Aaron, I think it is important to consume the right information on the front end, because that believism, as you said, there's a time and a place for consuming it, and there's a time and a place for reflecting on it. There's a time and a place for just putting the blinkers on and going, but you have to guard what's coming into your mind. You have to guard your, protect your environment is what I say. Yeah. And it's very important to do that. So with any goal people set for themselves, I recommend that on the front end. You have to have a critical eye or ear when it comes to who you're listening to, what you're listening to. I know you put out great content on this, but the Living Fit, you've had so many great guests on, a lot of them that have overlapped with my podcast as well. So I know firsthand. And it's important that people do that on the front end, because at least you're setting yourself up for success then.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some ways that you keep yourself in check? If you have a snapshot of it, obviously, I think you go in pretty in depth in the book, but a snapshot of this is how I hold myself accountable to be the person that I'm saying that I am.
A couple of ways. I use what I talk about in the book as pillars of self-discipline. And self-discipline, there's a little bit of a misconception around this. And I do think my next book is going to be the focus of this. I'm researching my next book as we speak. And I think that this is going to be the area and the focus that I go into with it. And self-discipline, and one of my mentors used to always tell me that successful people do what they have to do regardless of how they feel. And I've spent the last 10 years trying to cultivate that as somebody that has more fuck ups and failures than anybody. Like, it's funny. My daughter asked me this the last day. She's 7 next week in 2 weeks. And she was asking me about mistakes because she scratched up one of the TVs with a crystal rock that she found outside. And she was in tears and she was just bawling her eyes out. And I said, look, Holly, I said, everybody makes mistakes. I was like, the important thing is that you learn from it and you don't make the same mistake again. And she asked me, do you ever make mistakes? I said, I have made more, Holly, than anybody on this planet. And that's why I'm so happy. And what I'm
awesome.
trying to imprint in her is that mistakes are fine. Failures are fine. They're feedback on what didn't work.
Love
And building self-discipline is a combination of using that failure as feedback mixed in with doing the things that you have to do regardless of how you feel. And how I would recommend you approach that is you get clear on what it is you want to do, whatever that looks like. This is so relative to the person, whether that's to be a great husband or wife, whether that's to run a successful business and be an entrepreneur, whether that's to get to X amount of body fat, whether that's to compete at the CrossFit Games or your version of the local CrossFit Games, or if it's to run a marathon, if it's to look a certain way. There's so many ways that that can potentially show itself up for people. And self-discipline is the foundation pillar at which all that is built, because it allows you to do what you have to do regardless of how you feel. And then the real secret sauce, Aaron, and you know this already, I've heard you speak on it on previous episodes, it's habits. It's about what you consistently do. Tell me what you do every day and I'll tell you where you'll be in a year. And that's what it's about. And whatever protocol I hold myself to, I have great external people. I've got my partner, I've got my sister, I've got my best friends, people who will hold me accountable because they know I tell them what I want to do. I tell them where I want to go, what I want to achieve, whether that's in my personal life, work life, or something else. And normally they don't have to hold me accountable because I am my own biggest critic, which is a catch-22. It's brilliant for keeping you accountable.
Sword there.
It's a Honda. If ever there was a blessing and a curse, that it's that, because you hold yourself accountable, and I do hold myself to a very high standard. But sometimes that's fueled, and the cost of that is anxiety. Something I battled with for long periods of my life is anxiety, because you're living in that constant future of more and more and more, go, which is brilliant. I don't have any issue with getting up and going. I have a lot of natural ambition, but that comes at the cost of other things. It can make me tunnel visioned, and it can make me blind to the things around me. And I love the quote. I think it's a W.C. Clement quote that, don't forget the flowers at your feet when you're reaching for the moon, i.e. the things that are important in your life right now when you're going and trying to achieve and strike for these great things in your life. And that's what I do. It's that self-discipline, building those pillars. And I have my anchors. For me, it's getting up early, it's reading every day, it's running every day. They build the pillars of self-discipline for me. They look different to different people, from the book as I spoke about it. And then making sure that my daily habits match to that, because effectively, to quote somebody else, Seneca, smarter people out there have said it before me, form good habits and just become a slave to them. And that's what it is about at the end of the day, because your habits determine what you do. And then I have those external accountability partners and the people that are close to me mixed with those internal accountability to myself. And that tends to keep me on track for the most part.
Man, that's incredible. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, and the listeners, if they're on our LivingFit group or, wherever they're catching this from, a bunch of them are starting, I can see they're becoming students of their own habits. Right. And so this is just going to be gold for them. So, obviously you're researching your next book. I love the premise. I love the idea. Do you have any crazy thing like the Arctic Circle coming up? Anything nutso that you're going after, or is it just reading and writing incredible words?
I'm writing considerably a lot at the minute to kind of get into that mind frame. Like my first draft of any of my books, but 3 books that I've released, I'd be embarrassed if anyone saw the first draft, because it's just the skeleton of what eventually gets released. And I'm at that stage now. I am training for the Spartan Worlds Ultra, the 24-hour race in September. So from mid-July, everything will be gearing towards that. So that's a 13-mile loop with 60 obstacles for 24 hours. And it's go as many loops as you can within that 24-hour period. So as of now, I'll be training for that come the mid-July. It'll be kind of a 6 to 8 week block, intense training block up to that. I tend to do one event a year just because there's a little bit of a curse of knowledge. I'm a fitness coach, qualified personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist. So there's a curse of knowledge because I know how bad these things are for my body when it comes to the intense training.
Yeah, well, this one sounds small, you know, not that big.
Relatively
Yeah,
speaking,
right.
it's
Only
probably
24
on the
hours
lower
straight,
end.
no big deal.
Yeah, it should be fine in theory, but
I
I
don't know.
know what it does. It's not even the event that does it. It's the training blocks and the lead up to it. It's the multiple hours of training, the I won't say sleep deprivation because that's only for the 24 hours, but your sleep quality or my sleep quality tends to deteriorate as I go into those heavy training blocks, just because cortisol is so high, stress is so high, you're training multiple hours a day. So I tend to not do too many, partly because I have other priorities in my life, but also curse of knowledge. I know how bad it is for my body. Same as when I was competing in bodybuilding. Like if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done as many shows and I wouldn't have done as many shoots because it was so bad for my health overall. But I was 26, 27.
Yeah.
There was no stopping me.
Stupid.
20
when you're 20 stupid years old.
Yeah, and that's the most accurate term of all time, Aaron. But now with these challenges, I tend to take a bit more of a break on the back end of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's incredible. Actually, something that you just helped me recall from your book that I thought, man, I should actually play with that a little bit. I didn't even really think about it. Like you, I'm a 7.5 hour sleep a night guy. But when I'm training for something, it doesn't seem to be enough, but I'm a 7.5 hour, I got to get up at 4:30, like that whole thing. And so I just do it anyways, it's create the habits and then stick with them, kind of a thing. But you said you do 9, I think is what you said in the book. And I'm like, oh, wow, that is brilliant. I didn't even think about toggling the sleep because you're putting your body under so much more duress, like you said, and it can be not good. You can not get the recovery that you need, even though you might get the W or you might be able to complete the event or whatever the case might be, because you were able to endure that. It definitely doesn't mean it's good for you. What did somebody help you with that, or is that something you discovered on your own? Or
I discovered it largely by myself off the back of being a nutritionist. So I've been working with people in nutrition for the last 10 years. And it's so obvious as a nutritionist that when somebody's training for an intense event, you increase their caloric intake and you increase the amount of, like, it's so obvious. If you're doing, 3 20-minute hit sessions a day and you're 80 kilos, all other things equal, you're going to have much lower caloric requirements and needs than somebody who's running 20 miles every day. Like, that's so obvious from a nutrition standpoint. And to be honest, Aaron, probably until 2016, 2017, didn't apply that logic to sleep. And now I do. Like, if I'm not training for an event and I'm doing a light training load, I'm fine on 7.5 hours. But if I'm doing an entrenched training load or phase for 6 weeks, my sleep requirement goes up to 9 and sometimes 10. And I prioritize that. Like, sleep's a non-negotiable for me. And I'm the opposite side of team no sleep. People who are like, team no sleep, get up and do it. I will sacrifice a workout faster than I'll sacrifice a quality night's sleep in 9 out of 10 scenarios. Now, if I'm training for a race, there's an exception. Or if I want to get up and do a workout because I have family priorities that day, I will sacrifice it at times if I'm training for a specific race. But 80% of the year, 90% of the year, I would always take the quality sleep over it because of the knock-on effect it has on everything between hormonal balance and energy levels and just, perceived happiness levels throughout the day when you're not exhausted all the time. So I'm on the opposite side of team no sleep. And I wasn't. When I competed in bodybuilding, I was team no sleep. I was get up and do your 4 a.m. cardio. I was like, just suck it up and do it. Go to bed at 12, get 4 hours sleep, nap during the day if you need to, and just grind it out. So I've been on both sides, but I've done a complete 180 on that over the last 5-6 years.
Well, that's probably half the reason why your brain wasn't working at that time. And then you kept 100%. Doing shows, and it's insane how it's one of the most productive things that you can do from a physiological and psychological standpoint, but it's the last thing that most people will ever do, right? They'll sacrifice that. So how do you do it? Do you go to bed earlier, or do you sleep in later, or a bit of both?
I will always try and go to bed earlier. because I have a very supportive network around me between my partner, my mother, my father, who live not that far away from me, my sister. I have people in my life where I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody has that option. Some people have 7 kids, they have 5 kids, and they can't go to bed early.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily recommending that's what you do. For me personally, though, I'll always try and go to bed earlier and get up at a similar time. I'm naturally a very poor sleeper. I have to do a lot of work to get a good quality night's sleep. And one of my ways of doing that is having a consistent wake up time, whether that's 5 a.m. and it's normally 6 a.m. in the summers just because it's so bright.
Yeah.
I find I function way better if I just shift in an hour in the summertime. But I'll go to bed at 9 p.m. or I go to bed at 10 p.m. Or you could find me in bed, Aaron, at 8 p.m. if I'm absolutely exhausted. One of the advantages, now my daughter's older now, one of the advantages when she was smaller was she was going to bed around that time. So it was great.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right, cool.
perfect.
I was like, good night, everybody. I was like, I'm going to bed too. And it helped. So you have to kind of maneuver it yourself to kind of find your sweet spot. I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I found having a consistent wake up time, particularly with my schedule for whether it's writing or, podcast or content creation or working on programs with people, all the things that I do, having that consistent wake up time makes it easier to stick with that. So I tend to shift it. And to be honest, like I end up just watching crap on TV anyway and just being half asleep on the couch. So I just kind of take the hit and go to bed and just take the hit on that side.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And if you want to have bad quality of sleep, just keep having kids. And then you'll never sleep. So, or at least never sleep fully. I feel so bad for my wife. Like like a mouse could fart and she would wake up. For me, it's like, I will sleep through the crying children, as long as I know everything is safe and secure, I will sleep through it all for sure. So I didn't even think that we would go into sleep, but you just reminded me and recalled, and I think it's such an important topic for people in their fitness, and fitness, not just in physical, but mental. So that leads us, obviously we're coming to the end, running out of time. You've got loads more knowledge to bestow upon us. I am sure this has been an absolute honor and a pleasure, Brian. The last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is Living Fit to you?
It's a great question. And I know you put this to everybody, so you're getting ranges of answers. For me, the first thing I thought, Aaron, when I listened to the podcast first or listened to the YouTube show first, was, I wonder what's my definition of that. And for Living Fit, for me, everything comes back to how I feel day to day. And when I think living fit, I also think living well, and I think living with energy, and I think living with inspiration, and living with passion, and living with things that I love to do, and living with that feeling of jumping out of bed every morning. And I have that now. I didn't always, this from reading Rewire Your Mindset. When I worked as a teacher, an elementary school teacher, a primary school teacher, before I transitioned into my career in fitness, I knew Friday was the weekend and I was ecstatic every Friday. And I knew Sunday, I would have Sunday blues, and I know it was Monday work day and I'd have to get up and I'm like, oh, another week and I have to slug this out. I don't have that now, and I don't have it at all. I have days when I'm like, okay, I have a lot on my plate today, but it makes me excited. For example, I've got 4 podcast interviews today and writing in the morning. So it's quite a jam-packed day in terms of work, but that excites me. It's things I love to do. And living fit for me means that I get to do that consistently by fueling my body with the right foods, by getting my quality sleep, by setting these goals and targets that make me feel fulfilled in my personal life, by being what I think or try to be a good partner or a good dad or a good son or brother or friend or whatever it is in terms of the relationship with the person that's important to me. And it all comes back to living fit with that. I think it effectively works as a domino. If I can get one right, the others tend to knock themselves over. And as someone that has struggled with balance for large portions of my life, with that type A personality of go, tunnel vision, and hitting these external success metrics, best-selling books, X figures in your business, professional cards in bodybuilding shows and finishes at races, all these external things, they were fueled by an internal anxiety for so long. And that's the opposite to what I think living fit is. So now, once I'm able to get up every day and I love what I'm doing and I feel energized and happy and well and fit to do it, that would be my overall definition of what living fit means to me.
That's amazing. And if you're listening to this and you haven't already, and you're ready to rewire your mindset, I don't know why you haven't purchased Brian's book. Brian, thank you so much again. It's been such an honor to have you on the show.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much again, Aaron.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.